Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Average Film Enjoyer podcast. We are joined today by Gunch on video for the first time. We're testing the waters. If you are listening to this and you want to see it with video, you can watch it on YouTube under Average Film Enjoyer. That's the name of the channel. And yeah, we thank you for joining. We thank you for listening in, should I say, and Gunch, we thank you for joining. This is Film Gunch. He's on TikTok. How about you just promote your stuff, man? Say what you gotta say.
Thank you, Jagger and Trey, of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm Gunch. I'm a TikTok critic. I mean, I'm a little small time now, but I have a lot of really, really cool friends, including these two guys who are awesome that I've made on TikTok. Um, and I have a channel on TikTok. It's called Film Gunch. We talk about movies, we do ratings, we do comedy occasionally. And I'm also starting up a gaming channel called Gunch's Arcade. So if you're interested, check it out. Gunch, like hunch with a G. That's me. You
Sweet.
can call me
Yeah.
Gunch.
Do you
You
want
can
to?
call me Mr. G. Whatever's good for you is good enough for me. My chiropractor
Yeah.
said that about his name, and I thought it was funny, even though he's kind of weird. Definitely gives me like American Psycho vibes. Like he's telling me about how he ate a whole bucket of sauerkraut while he was like cracking my back, and it was like, okay, yeah,
That's,
cool. Please don't kill me.
oh, that's crazy. Do you want to go through your top four on Letterbox just so people can get a vibe of, or kind of a vibe of like what kind of movies you like?
Okay, sure. I mean, some people have said that I have hot takes. I really don't think that I don't think they're that crazy. I've met a lot of people on TikTok who agree with me. So my favorite film of all time is probably Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, 1974. I absolutely love that film. I think it's totally flawless. I think it's a perfect proto slasher, and I think it went on to inspire a lot of great slashers. I love horror
Agreed.
stuff,
Yes.
and I think like as far as like I think horror should be tasteful, even if it is like hyper violent, and I think that that's possible. And I think one of the most interesting things about that movie is that Toby Hooper, the director, was trying to get it to have a G or a PG rating. So there's actually
That's
very little
wild.
gore, and it has a really pretty
Yeah,
color palette.
it
I can
does.
show the color palette. I have a from of it, like the main color from each scene, just like in lines, like on a canvas. That's up on my wall. It's behind my big head here, but I could show it later. And
Yeah.
then I also really like The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. So yeah, kind of eclectic tastes, sure. But I also think that that's like the best Disney movie ever. I mean, granted, Disney's got a lot of problems, but Winnie the Pooh is like the ultimate like free serotonin for me. I think that it's like an Aesopian movie. It's like that movie will just provide the immaculate vibes every time, in my opinion. I
Yeah.
also like the
Um,
collection. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask you because I just recently watched Christopher Robin. It's
Oh,
kind of like
sure.
a legacy sequel, I guess, with Ewan McGregor, and I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, Winnie the Pooh is wholesome as hell, and
Totally.
I was just wondering what were your thoughts about that if you've seen it?
I liked it. I liked it. I mean, and I mentioned this before we started recording, but the thing with biopics is that they're beholden to like portraying things accurately, and I'm not sure if they always do that. I'm not super sure like what A. Milne's life was like actually. I just know that like he created Winnie the Pooh in response to like the war, and that's why it became so popular because people needed something wholesome, even though he was like a criminal, like a crime mystery thriller writer. Um, but I thought
Hmm.
that the movie was great, and they had a lot of like the OG voice actors, not the OOG from like the my favorite movie, the '77 film, but like a lot
Yeah.
of like voice actors from like the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, the show, and like the other like spin-off movies, which are all great, by the way. But yeah, I thought Christopher Robin was pretty good, and I love Ewan basically in everything.
Yeah,
The Duke
he's
rules.
great.
But yeah, that was like
All right, I'll let you
that
get
was
back to
the
it.
Winnie the Pooh voice actor, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, Jim Cummings, was awesome,
Yeah,
and not the Wolf of Snow Hollow guy. He's a different guy with the same name, but yeah. Um, and I really like Election, Alexander Payne, Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon. I think I definitely feel like that's an underrated movie. Best example of an unreliable narrator ever, in my opinion. I absolutely adore that film. And I think like I think a lot of reasons why people wouldn't like it is because the main character is kind of like a piece of like trash. We're
hmm
not swearing on this podcast, right?
You could say whatever you want. We
I mean,
already
we don't say no, but
I'll try to keep it clean for you.
we already get
But yeah,
we already get
so
marked explicit if you talk about a movie with violence or anything. So say whatever.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I
great
mean the main
coincidence
character
was
sorry, go ahead.
the first episode that got marked explicit was the first episode I was on,
Oh, of
and I was
course.
like, yeah,
You dirty bird.
I can't even remember what we talked about, but I was like, oh, okay, cool,
We talked about Old
Yeah.
Boy. That's what we talked about. That was the
Oh
problem.
yeah.
yes,
Old Boy is gonna get you every time. Great film, by the way. I love Old Boy.
yes,
Yeah, I mean Matthew Broderick's character is a total piece of shit, but I feel like that's a great example of a hateable protagonist, like the perfect example of it, because every character is so three-dimensional. I absolutely love that movie. And I know I'm getting a little bit too into these movies, but
Not at all.
fourth and finally, Funeral Parade of Roses. Have you guys ever seen that?
I've heard of it. I've
I
not
have
seen
not.
it though.
Have you ever seen Tetsuo the Iron Man
Yes.
or Eraserhead?
I love Eraserhead with my whole heart. I talked about Tetsuo last episode actually.
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Hell yeah. Yeah, I love Tetsuo. I love Eraserhead too. If you like that sort of like raw underground style of film, Funeral Parade of Roses is a great example of that. And it features a lot of trans characters, and it's from 60s Japan. And it's basically about
Hmm.
this like trans person making a movie, but the movie scenes are so expertly crafted that you think it's part of the movie, and then they pan out and you hear somebody go cut, and then it like pans out and you find out that it was just a movie scene. So that's like a really really great movie as far as like blending the lines, like blurring the lines between like reality and fantasy. And I think sometimes that can be pretentious, but Funeral Parade of Roses, highly underrated movie. I loved it. I definitely
I'll have
recommend
to
it.
check that one out.
I believe.
All right,
Oh, I was gonna say. I believe I was reading one of your reviews and someone had recommended that to you in the comments of a review.
Yeah, in the comments of a list, because I was talking about my Pride Month watches,
Oh yeah.
and my friend Angie, who I know in real life, who's great, she was like, "Well, I think we started with Mulholland Drive, and
Persona.
there was one other like batshit. Oh, it was Persona.
Yeah.
So like
Mhm.
Persona, Ingmar Bergman, and Mulholland Drive, those are like absolutely crazy, like elevated gay films." And she was like, "Well, now you got to keep the energy going with Funeral Parade of Roses." And I watched it, and it was like, "Wow, this is like one of my favorite movies of all time."
Now.
And I
Oh.
watched it again, and then I watched it again, and it's amazing, amazing.
Now, Gunch, you gave Persona 4.5 stars. Did you?
Well, I did. I
Um.
think that's what it
Yeah.
says.
Yeah,
I mean, the numbers don't lie.
Trey.
yeah, we
I
reviewed
know.
it.
Ari
We
Aster's
reviewed
gonna
it.
kill me.
Oh.
We reviewed it last Friday. Um, so this episode will be coming out on Friday the 8th, I believe. So we reviewed it last Friday. And we both came into the episode giving it a 3.5 star rating. Neither of us loving it, right? Like
We
and
admired it.
we admire like how like it's a well crafted film. But we talked about like we just couldn't get into the characters and the character development, which is a really important thing for me personally. And throughout the episode, you'll listen to us keep talking and talking, and by the end of the episode, we both dropped it like 4-star ratings. Like I think Jagger has it at a 2 now, and
Oh,
I
you
have it
guys
at a
like
2.5.
you guys like really don't like it now that you like dissected it.
Yeah.
I 2.5 isn't a negative rating for me. That's like right down the middle, like just average.
Fair.
So, but Jagger gave it a negative review, and yeah, is just it was funny because I've been looking forward to that one for so long, and because there's so many of my friends that are like, dude, you got to go check this out. It's unbelievable. And I was like, okay, sweet, 5-star incoming. And I finished it, and I was like, huh, that wasn't for me.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. It's kind of like, so here's the thing. I mean, not to detract from like the movie we're going to talk about, but it's older. I mean, it's not as old as It
Yeah.
Happened One Night, but it's older. And I think just the fact that somebody like, well, Ari Aster and Robert Eggers, you know, they're good friends in real life, and that is like both of their favorite movies. And I definitely recognize like a lot of the callbacks to that movie from like Hereditary, Midsummer. I mean, even like The Witch in the
Yeah.
Lighthouse. A lot of like those shots. There was one shot in Persona that is like a carbon copy shot of like that scene in Midsummer where she's like looking down, or I think. But maybe you guys remember what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And I think like, you know, and it's gay, which I mean to me that makes it more interesting. I know that's not everybody's. I know that's not the case for everybody. And I think it was good. And I like I don't mind a slow burn, but I think my only problem with it was like at that point. Okay, so I had watched Persona and then I had watched Mulholland Drive, and it was like, okay, Ingmar Bergman did Persona and David Lynch did Mulholland Drive, and I love them both. I mean, don't get me wrong, but like, is like having a psychological breakdown actually part of the lesbian experience, or is that just something that like straight male directors dream up? Because it seems like that's a really common thing, and not a
Yeah.
common thing in like anything directed by like, you know, like a queer woman that I've seen. But you
Yeah.
know, I don't
Yeah.
know. And like just that nature of it, I feel like it was inherently going to be lacking. But you know, back then like film was kind of a boys club for the most part. It still kind of is.
Yeah. And that brings me to something we talked about, not to so like we haven't even gotten to the movie review yet, but that we talked about like that kind of stuff with The Help, which we reviewed. I think that
Yeah.
was one of our first like few. And it brings me to that thought of like having a director of a subject matter that they are not like, if about a certain group of people that they are not a part of. So like I think
Totally agree.
it's Tate Taylor who directed The Help.
Yeah.
Um,
And he's a white guy,
he's
right?
a white, yeah, he's a white male, and that's something we talked about. Is there's like it's just huge white savior complex throughout that entire film. And it just feels there's parts of it that definitely feel very out of touch, which is because it's directed by and written by white people, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my brain went when you were talking about that. And I feel like that happens a lot when
I
someone
agree
outside of
totally.
a certain disenfranchised group tries to make a story or film about that group. They just like there's always going to be something that just feels off, you know?
They
Yeah.
need to take notes from people who've actually lived that experience. Otherwise,
Exactly.
it is going to be missing something. I mean, it doesn't matter how good of a movie it is. But yeah, I fully agree
Yeah.
with your take on Help. I think that
Yeah.
that's the same
Yeah.
kind of concept. I mean, granted, it's a different kind of oppression and everything, but same exact
Mm-hmm.
kind of concept. I do
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
However, I did not see that as much in Mulholland Drive that I did in Persona. Maybe it's because Persona made me in certain moments, much more uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. And I found Persona to be quite boring. I don't know if that's, again, just me. You can listen to the episode. We tore it apart. But
I will. I mean, it's a slow burn.
it's
I
a
understand.
it's a very slow
It's very,
burn.
Yeah, it's very
and
heavy. I mean, I understand
yeah,
completely.
But
And I would never be like the kind of person to knock somebody for like not liking something. I did like it,
yeah,
but I also I don't mind a slow burn in
ye-
most cases.
and
I hope it's
I
okay that I'm drinking some water or some flavored water.
that's totally fine. Yeah. And I like a slow burn. I mean, you have your things like No Country for Old Men that are very slow. I'd even say The Exorcist is very slow at the beginning. It is a
Sure.
slow burn. And I have no
But when
problem
those
with this.
movies go to 100,
Yeah.
they'll be at like 20 miles per hour, and then all of a sudden it'll just be like, bam, like the craziest shit'll happen. And that didn't really happen in something like Persona.
yeah, yeah. And I appreciate a good slow burn, like Jagger said, but for me to be engaged the entire time, it needs to be a script that I'm like connecting with in some way. Like I watched Phantom Thread, Paul Thomas Anderson movie, Daniel Day-Lewis, and that is one of the slowest burns I've ever watched. Like that is a slow movie. It's very dialogue heavy. Nothing terribly exciting happens at any point, but I was like locked in the entire time because I cared about these characters and I wanted to know what would happen. And I felt connected to these characters, and I just didn't feel that with Persona. But that's the last thing I'll say, so we can get into our movie review.
And
If you
I'm
guys have
sorry
any
to,
last thoughts.
yeah, I mean, I love Phantom Thread too, and I definitely would agree with what you're saying. And I'm sorry to have cut you off earlier, Jagger. But, um, what were you saying?
Oh, I was saying though that I did not love Persona, if you couldn't tell. However, like, but now I'll give it credit. Like, the acting's great, cinematography's great. But you were saying the lesbian breakdown concept, right? I found Mulholland Drive to be extraordinary. I have Mulholland Drive at 5 stars. I love a lot of Lynch's work. I'd say it's probably top 3 in my opinion. But I understand the same like concept, but I would say Mulholland Drive did it in a more tasteful way because it had other storylines going. It had a few storylines
Mm-hmm.
going, and I think that
Yeah,
Persona was a very one-track movie. It gave you
yeah,
one story and it did what it wanted to do, and what it wanted to do was not what I wanted it to do. And I guess that's where I'm
Yeah.
coming from with that. And I think Mulholland Drive was very, very Lynchian. And I feel like he totally leaned into his style. And loving David Lynch, I loved that. Same with Asteroid City. I love Asteroid City, but that's like full throttle Wes Anderson.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I do not love Ingmar Bergman, and this is very Bergman, so it didn't connect with me as much. And that's my take on it, I guess.
That's totally understandable. And I mean, I love Lynch, and I think Mulholland Drive is a great movie too. I think like if you watch like behind the scenes footage of Lynch, granted like, the guy is kind of a notorious like crank, and I'm using air quotes when I say the word crank. But like if you watch like his behind the scene footage with like his people, I mean, he generally looks like he's pretty respectful as a director to me. And I think that that makes
Mm-hmm.
a lot of difference. And I mean, I don't know Lynch personally, but just like really like loving his body of work, he feels more like a director who would take notes from people.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ingmar Bergman's like, but I mean, it was an old timey movie. Um, Directors generally, I think, were pretty. I don't want to say they were all abusive, but I don't know. They probably weren't like listening to women as much back then, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And
But
can I quickly use a segue if we're talking about not listening to women into our movie? It happened one night.
Perfect segue. God. Oh, God.
What a
Talk about
segue.
culture shock.
Yeah.
Dude, he sucks.
Yeah. So for those who are listening, today we are reviewing It Happened One Night. I believe, Jagger, is it number 244? Yeah?
Let me check. That's
number 245 or 244.
It's 244.
Um,
I also want to send a quick shout out to the people listening on Apple Podcasts, because you are now in season 2 of our show. I decided to transition it from before the 250 series. Now season 2 is the 250 series. So
sweet.
now I'm able to keep track a lot easier. And yes, it is 244. I'm looking now.
That's awesome.
Yep, number 244. It Happened One Night, starring our lead stars are Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. Don't know if there's any relation to Stephen Colbert, but that'd be interesting. Was released in 1934. It has a 4.1 overall on Letterboxd and a IMDb score of 8.1. So a little synopsis for people who haven't seen this. A renegade reporter and a crazy young heiress meet on a bus heading for New York and end up stuck with each other when the bus leaves them behind at one of the stops. I'll let you guys talk about what your thoughts are first, because I think you guys both have this at 3 stars. I have this at 4 stars for 79 out of 100. So I quite enjoyed this one, but why don't you guys take it away, and then I can come in later. So why don't you guys go ahead?
Gunch, before you talk, if you don't mind me quickly interjecting.
Jagger, feel free.
A quick ratings thing you forgot to add. It is a 4.1 average on Letterboxd and a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes as far as critics score goes. A 93 audience score, and I would have to check IMDb. But yeah, I found this film to be kind of, if you will, how do I phrase it? It was sort of discriminatory. I think that's fair.
Characteristically insufferable, I would say.
Yeah, and the whole movie focused from pretty much the point of view of Clark Gable, following him a lot more than Claudette Colbert, and almost at times ignoring her to put more screen time on Clark Gable. By the way, it's an 87 Metascore and 8.1 on IMDb. And it seems to be very widely regarded as a great movie, exclusively because this is the first real rom-com, right? This is your first big rom-com. And of course, your, critics are gonna be like, oh, the first of the kind, blah, blah, blah. It's not that good. In comparison to other rom-coms, I could list off quite a few that I find to be, and I'll get into the more worthy, actually, when we get to our questions. I wrote down some notes that Clark Gable at some times was funny, at other times was, like you said, absolutely insufferable, and made me really bothered, I feel like is the word I can use.
I agree.
The ending is so predictable. I mean, as soon as, and spoiler alert for a movie from 1934,
if you haven't seen it yet, that's your fault. You've had 110 years to watch it.
Yeah. And as soon as they introduced the walls of Jericho and he started talking about his, was it a trombone?
Bugle or something? The trombone boy gonna blow down the walls of Jericho.
Yeah.
It's a biblical thing.
It's a biblical thing. As soon as he said that, you were like, oh, at some point in this movie he's getting trombone, bugle, whatever, and he's taking down the wall, and it's gonna be like, whoa, risque ending for 1934. And I mean, it's the rough draft of the rom-com, and I'd even say very rough draft of the rom-com. And just because it's the rough draft doesn't make it the best. So yeah, Gunch, go for it.
That's fair. I mean, all these are really great points, and it is rough, I would say. There were definitely a lot of moments where it's like, whoa, yikes. I was streaming this on TikTok, um, and there were like three people who were watching it the whole time who were like, ah, this is one of my favorite movies. My grandma spoke in a transatlantic accent. I love this. I love Clark Gable. He's so sexy. He's so handsome, blah, blah, blah. But then, like, the majority of other people were like, I'm sorry, Gunch. I had to leave because I just find old movies like this totally, totally hard to watch. And then, like, some crying emojis. And it's like, I understand, man. There were a lot of parts in this movie and I was sitting there narrating it the whole time, and I was like, "Wow, ouch, what? Yikes!" Like, and okay, this movie is Spaceballs, right? Or I should say that Spaceballs is this movie. It's the kind of the same concept, but also like that is like a rom-com cliche. And I mean, granted, when you're looking at older movies, you know that the cliches were original at the time, so I could see how, like, back in the day, this movie wouldn't come off as so rough, but it has been copied so many times. And I mean, like, all gender discrimination aside, and there is a lot of that in this movie, and I think that that's what keeps it from being, like, above an average movie for me, is specifically just, like, that aspect of it, which we can get into later. But, like, I think, like, I think this movie was the first. I did some research on this, but this was, I believe, the first movie to ever include somebody running away at the altar.
Really?
Hmm.
So, like,
That's very interesting.
that's like heavy. I mean, I can't even count, like, there are hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe even millions of movies that do that. Like that is a really, really intense trope. And there were a lot of things that like went on to inspire other movies. I'm not saying it's a good movie. I don't think it is. I think like I think it's inherently a problem. I was reading a few like film scholars like essays on it, and like one of them said, well, for the time, Claudette Colbert was breaking down barriers because her character was actually really advanced, because most of the time a female lead in a movie back then was a lower class woman depending on a man who was rich, and this was the inverse of it, so it turned it on its head. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of other movies from that time period that did that. So like that's like the first invalid argument that I found. And the second one, I mean, here's the thing. Rom-coms aren't like they're not really my go-to. And I think that's because a lot of them are kind of sexist. But I know that there's a huge audience for it. But I mean, you look at something like Love Actually, like I kind of hated that movie. And I know that that's everybody's favorite, but when you actually like look really hard at that movie, I feel like I feel like none of the women win in that movie, like at all. And like these like kind of despicable men just get away with it. They just get away with their behaviors. There's no punishment, no like moral or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, do you guys have thoughts on that? I mean, I have some more notes that I
Um,
can explain on later, but I don't want to talk for, too long at a time.
no, no, you're good. I think so. For me personally, um, I enjoyed this. As I said, I gave it a 79 out of 100, 4 stars. So that's like pretty good for me. Um, uh, I think it's really interesting. Um, I think it's really interesting for me, at least. Like I tried to put myself in the headspace of like I'm sitting in the cinema in 1934 watching this, right? And uh, and then I think about like all the rom coms that come after and I'm just like, wow, this really is like the carbon copy for hundreds and hundreds of rom-coms to come after. And that's definitely it didn't take away from the experience. It actually kind of enhanced it a little bit because it felt like I was viewing like an important piece of cinema history. Like where a piece of cinema like completely like starts this whole new genre or kind of like revolutionizes something. Like how you watch like The Shining and watch the cinematography in that, and that was the first movie they ever used. I can't remember what it's called, but that shot where they have behind Danny when he's on the big wheel.
A tracking.
Yeah, a tracking shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
I think that sounds right.
That. I like The Shining. Movie.
That's like one of our favorite movies. I think that's in my like top 10. It's in Jagger's like top 5. We love The Shining.
That's The Shining is awesome.
Yeah. So that was that it didn't really like take away, it actually elevated the experience, like feeling like I'm witnessing this piece of history, like this very important piece. And like I can admit it's not like the best rom-com I've ever seen. Especially because, as you guys were talking about, the gender discrimination. And I feel like there's a lot of rom-coms that I personally really enjoy that do that really well. One that came to mind when you were talking about like Love Actually is Say Anything with John Cusack. I feel like they do it. I feel like that's a really, really well done rom-com. But I can totally agree and see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I'm not saying all rom-coms do it. I'm just saying like a majority.
Yeah.
But there are absolutely good rom-coms. I think like most of the old John Cusack movies were pretty good, personally.
Yeah, except for High Fidelity. His character in High Fidelity freaking sucks, dude. The most unbearable character he has ever played.
Man, I gotta go back and rewatch that movie because like I generally like
The only redeeming part of it is Jack Black.
Pathetic dude. Yeah, I love Jack Black. Yeah.
I'm also, if we're gonna talk about rom-com tropes, it did invent a lot of rom-com tropes. However, there's one rom-com trope that I would like to say it didn't have. And that is a female leading rom-com. And now you have a couple of those. 10 Things I Hate About You comes to mind. And that is a
movie.
It's a female leading rom-com. I think you have things like 16 Candles under there. And 16 Candles is a generally touchy movie. It has its big problems. However, it is a female leading thing. So there are movies where the female does kind of win. La La Land, no one really wins that. In the end.
No one wins in that movie. That ending is depressing.
No one wins in that movie. However, it's not exclusively the female losing. A lot of movies are like that. But this did follow the female didn't exactly win it. You know? I mean, they both kind of won in the end.
So she got to marry him.
She got to marry him, but like
kind of I mean, if you think about that in terms of like today and how much we've learned about intersectionality, and I mean the importance of like independence, is that winning, or is that in of itself an archaic idea of winning? And I'm using winning in like air quotes. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, ending up marrying that mustache is not winning, but.
Yeah. I think he's handsome and everything, but wow, that mustache. I don't know.
Hey man, it was the 30s. All the ladies were like, "Oh my lord, Clark Gable."
Yeah.
Dude, people love him in that movie. Like, I was watching clips on YouTube. Like, it is filled with like ladies, and I'd presume ladies, but maybe younger women too. Just like, oh, totally just fawning. Oh, Clark Gable is amazing. They don't make him like this anymore. Closest that anybody's ever going to come to him is Ryan Gosling, Hard Eyes. And it's like, yeah, I think Gosling is better. But
the fact that someone puts Clark Gable in the same tier as Ryan Gosling is an offense. Ryan Gosling is the most gorgeous and perfect man to ever exist on this planet.
I agree. I love him. I think he's a great actor too.
Yeah.
I think that's a hardcore take. And I mean, Jagger, like when you were saying earlier, like about how this doesn't follow um, the leading actress's story, the leading like woman character's story, I think that that's huge. I think that that's a huge reason this movie comes off. I mean, there are a lot of reasons this movie comes off the way it is, but I
Yes.
think that's its greatest flaw, hands down. And I mean, there weren't a lot of like even female-led movies from that period. A lot of them did not really follow like they actually weren't three-dimensional. Or at least it doesn't really feel like that. I mean, I know that characterization and plots were a lot simpler back then, but still, like this movie had like very little. It was like a scene in the beginning of her and her dad, and that was basically like all the exposition for her. And then Clark Gable didn't really get a lot of exposition. It was like him in the phone booth, like arguing with his boss. So like right off the bat, and also like there's no way he wasn't totally blasted when he filmed that scene. Did you guys like? Did you guys feel that way? Like when he's in the phone
Yeah.
booth, he's like, "Now listen here, buddy," and it's like, dude, like, is this guy an alcoholic? No, I just feel like he
Probably,
was
most
drunk,
likely.
like on set that day. I mean, he was an alcoholic. I mean, he was put on this movie as punishment.
Wait, really?
Did you guys know that? Yeah.
I didn't know
A
that.
lot of like stuff from Paramount, I think was this company, right? Paramount.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was kind of like it's the same kind of idea as like people who were like getting punished from Prince of Egypt and they were put on Shrek. So like a lot of people were like punished by putting on this movie. And Clark Gable,
Hmm.
because of his affair with Joan Rivers, he was loaned from whatever studio he was working for. I can't remember, but he was loaned to work on this movie, and he didn't want to do it at all. And like he didn't like Frank Capra, and he showed up like totally like piss drunk and like aggravated and like very angry. So I mean, I wonder if he. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That scene really felt like he was totally blasted out of his ass.
Oh,
I mean, I think there's a lot of scenes that feel like that, that we can point to, where it doesn't seem like he's all with it. One scene I did want to talk about that had me cackling, like I had a lot of chuckles throughout this movie where I was like, huh, that's kind of funny, you know? But one scene that had me like audibly like belly laughing was the hitchhiking scene. So not only do you got Clark Gable like speed running,
Yeah,
but
it's all in the thumb, see? It's all about the thumb, yeah. That's what ladies don't understand. It's about the thumb, see? Like,
it wasn't me laughing like with the scene. It was me laughing at the scene and how out of touch it felt when she's like, you know what, I can get someone pulled over, and she flashes her upper thigh, and I was just like dying.
holy, yeah, I know. Holy mansplaining, and then that on the end. Wow, man, that was just like the cherry on the cake. Apparently, like, Claudette Colbert didn't want to show her leg. Apparently, she didn't want to show her leg for this movie.
Oh, that's so
And she saw the leg
30s.
double, and she was so grossed out by the leg double that she wanted to show her leg then. I mean, wow. Wow. That's not my leg, see? I gotta show my own leg. I can't let somebody look at this horrifying, gross leg. I gotta show my leg, see?
Yeah, I was laughing very, very hard at that for me personally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other points you guys want to touch on. Gunch, you said you had a few more notes.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've gone through everything I took notes on. I didn't have too many things to talk about. So, sorry, my mom is up here. Mom, say hello.
Hey, Trey's
Oh,
mom.
so that Gunch says hello. She says hi. She's embarrassed.
I totally
But
understand. She's super valid.
yeah, no. But I don't know if we want to get into our usual questions or what, or if you guys have anything else left you wanna touch on before.
I have one more I could add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to comment on how bizarre it is that they were sitting on the train with a full band playing flying trapeze in the back.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a 30s thing, but I imagine if you don't like the music, sitting stuck on a train with a full band playing probably very loudly on the back of a train, that's a really obnoxious place to be.
Yeah.
I feel like I see that in a lot of old movies. There's one point, at least one point, in like if it almost feels like every old movie where they go full vaudevillian and they just like do some sort of a show number or something. And like part of me is like, well, maybe that happened in the 30s because nobody had phones and people were probably bored to tears. So like that's how they did like communal things back then. I mean, you know, back when I was younger, like I watched all the like bonus features on all the like DVDs that I had because like I didn't have TikTok or podcasts or
Yeah.
anything like that. I mean, I'm not that old, but you know, but then like in the 30s, it's like, is that real? Or is that just like something to like, I don't know, lighten the mood, keep engagement? I feel like a lot of movies do that, like even into the 50s, and they never really mean anything to the movie, I feel
Mhm.
like, or like almost never. Like except in
Yeah.
movies that are like fully vaudevillian, like Gold Diggers in 1933, or like Wizard of Oz, where it's just like constantly like that style of scene. But like, there's also that scene in like the Vincent Price House of Wax. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. I mean, a lot of people
Mm-mm.
probably didn't. But like, there's a scene where it's just like can dancers for like 5 minutes, and it's like it's a horror movie, but like in the middle of it, it's just like what? And then there was also a scene where like a dude is like playing with his paddle balls for like 5 minutes, and he's like, "Hey, come and see the House of Wax," and it's like, why did we just, and then it's like, wow, what's with the, then it finally went back to the movie. Hey, what's with the guy? Well, I don't know, I just wanted to get a guy to advertise. Come on, let's go inside. And then the story just continues, and it's like, what? I
Yeah.
mean, granted, that movie supposedly was like the first 3D movie, so maybe that had something to do with it,
Oh, that's the
but I know there's other examples.
Yeah, imagine can dancers and you've never seen 3D before.
Right. Or back then, maybe never even seen can dancers because there was no such
Yeah.
thing as like video, so you
You
actually
just
had
get in the
to see
theater
it.
and that
Right.
scene comes up and you're just like, "Oh my god, what is happening?" That would
Say,
be
what's the
I would
idea? God,
That'd be crazy.
you were talking about the Bugle Boy blowing down the walls of Jericho or something, and there was that one scene where like it's like the motel owners or something, and the old boy's like, yeah, I was just going to the store for them. They requested some unusual things, a blanket, a rope, a trombone. I don't know. They must be into some weird stuff. It's like when the old lady's like, "Well, I don't know about that," or like something like that. I don't remember exactly how the scene went, but that was like about as close as we got to him actually blowing down, quote unquote, blowing down the wall of Jericho with a bugle or a French horn or whatever the
Yeah.
hell it was.
that's the explanation for the people in the 30s that didn't understand the metaphor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. They
Yeah,
they needed that.
they needed that.
I mean, and I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is that even back then and even now, education is kind of I mean, it is sort of gate kept. It's a lot better now, obviously, but there is still an inherent sort of like, um,
Lack.
there's like, it's like lack wouldn't be the word I would use, but it's like in like in access, like no access to that. Even people who want to be educated sometimes can't, or like can't be to the to the potential that they would like to be. Um, and obviously in the 30s that was really really bad. So maybe they needed it back then. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a completely different culture. That's just the one thing to keep in mind with this movie, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Um,
Trey, your
I wanted to,
questions. Yeah, pass the questions
yeah,
on.
I
Yeah.
wanted to get into what is the most rewatchable scene for you fellas?
Jagger.
I hate to be basic and take the answer from you, Trey, but that hitchhiking scene takes it with me for me with ease.
Yeah, that me as well. That I thought that was so funny. I was dying.
I thought that scene
Um,
was pretty funny, but there is one scene that really really got it for me personally,
Ooh.
and that was the scene where the guy comes up to him and he's like, "Yeah, I see that this dame is wanted, $10,000, and if I was you,
yes.
I would split your money with me, Mister." And then like Clark Gable like pulls him into the forest and he's like, "Yeah, all right, I got a piece on me, see? And you think we're doing $10,000? Oh no, we're doing a whole hostage situation. 1 million smackaroons for you. You think you can handle it?" And he's like scaring this dude. And then the guy's like, "Well, no, I don't want to do that." And he's like, Listen, I got a wife and kids." And Clark Gable's like, "No, you already know too much, see? You already know too much, so I got half a mind to sock you or maybe even cap you on the back as you walk away. So I want you to turn around and keep walking, and I don't want to see you after I count the count of 10 or whatever it was." Like, there was that whole scene where he just, like, scared that dude. That was awesome. That was really, really
Yeah,
funny to
I
me.
really enjoyed that. Um, for you guys, so we like to do a category who won the movie. For me personally, I said Clark Gable. I thought he gave a pretty solid performance. Nothing terrible, but I just couldn't find anything else that I was like, this is worthy of an Oscar. I know Gunch, you had said that this movie swept the Oscars in 1934.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, 35
so
technically because it was the
yeah,
34 Oscars. But yeah, this was the first movie to win a clean sweep, which is Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress. Um, Let me see. I had this written down.
Well,
The seventh Academy Award, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay. It won all of those. And apparently
yeah.
that's only been done 3 times. That one, and I don't remember what the other ones are here.
I
I'll
could.
look it up. But
Okay, look it up.
Gunch, do you want to give, for in your opinion, who won the movie?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I think mostly for me, I mean, granted, like Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert were really good, and they both looked great on screen. And I mean, back then, I mean, this was like when movies were transitioning from silent films to talkies. So like a big part of it was, you look good and you can be expressive. So that's the silent film. But then the actors who were able to make it like into the talking and this films of sound era also sounded good. So I mean, I'm not gonna say that the bar was low, because obviously, like all the people in this movie are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think that the writing, I mean, we talked about this. The writing is really cliched, but back then it wasn't cliche. But I still think that the writing had a lot of problems. I mean, like the the whole part where they like, it's a lot of mansplaining. Like, oh yeah, it's all about the thumb. You got to do the thumb, you ladies, or I'll tell you all about piggybacking, or how about how to dunk a donut. Like it was a lot of him just like explaining to her like really basic things. And I mean, maybe back then, but I'm not going to go ahead and say maybe back then women didn't know how to do those things, because that's outrageous. That is
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah,
outrageous. So I thought the writing was terrible, personally. But I will say that Frank Capra did a good job directing, and I think that that's because this movie, nobody had any faith in it. Nobody had any faith in the screenplay. It got rejected a bunch of times. Obviously, like Clark Gable came to the set all pissed off and drunk because he had his affair with Joan Rivers, so it was a punishment for him to get on it. And Claudette Colbert hated it. I mean, she lived until 1996. I'm not sure how old she was back then, but like all the way up until like she like passed away, she was like, that was the worst picture I've ever made. I don't understand how anybody likes it. I really don't understand how it won awards. Like, she didn't even come to the Oscars. She was leaving to go somewhere else. And then, like, when they found out that she was a winner of the award, apparently she was, like, rushed over to the Oscar ceremony, and she gave her acceptance speech in a travel suit, which, like, you know, back in the 30s, you had to wear, like, travel suits. So, like, I mean, it's the director for me. It's Frank Capra for me. I think he turned something that was not going to be good. And also, like, that was Paramount's, like, Paramount, and this is obviously, like, kind of a shitty term, but back then it was called, like, Poverty Row, the Poverty Row of movies. Granted, I know that that's kind of a shitty term, but he did, like, you know, obviously, like, people didn't think too highly of it. It was lower budget movies. A lot of them weren't successful, but supposedly this movie did bring Paramount back into the spotlight of, like, you know, a good, and I'm using air quotes again, a good, you know, movie making production house. I don't think that it happened. It was particularly a great movie, but I think I got to give it to Frank Capra for that reason.
Yeah. Jagger, what about you?
All right. So Gunch, I am going to unfortunately shoot down everything you have just said, and I am going to say that the person who won this movie was Robert Riskin, the writer. He invented the rom-com. I mean, how can you not? Now, being that based off of what you said, Clark Gable was not exactly the best person to work with. So therefore I am docking points on saying him. I am going to say Claudette Colbert completely, like, trying to avoid the movie. Although I find that funny, you gotta try and give some hope in what you have done. You have to try and be a little optimistic about it, I'd hope.
Right. I mean, you can't hate on something that you worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after it
And
does...
she got, like, a double salary for that, so she got, like, paid way more than usual.
Yeah. And I doubt that, and I'm, like, just gonna say it, just to kind of show what I mean, I doubt anyone on the Baywatch movie set liked it, but they all promoted it, so you just kind of have to roll with it, because you did it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's work.
It's work,
Ultimately.
and work is work, so, I mean...
part of your work is, like, having people watch it if you're, you know, in the movie business, so yeah,
it's like...
I would agree with that.
It's like seeing a Hollywood blockbuster movie actor in a Febreze commercial. It's that same thing.
Right.
They don't want to be there, but they're doing it because it's money. And money back then is a necessity. I mean, 1934, when they film it, likely way before because the editing process is insane in the 30s, you're still finishing off the Great Depression. So these people need money. You kind of can't shoot down the product. So therefore, I'm going to take them out of my question for the winner. And just because the director, Frank Capra, is probably going to end up winning for It's a Wonderful Life, I'm going to hand it over to the writer because he made the rom-com a big deal. And I love rom-coms, so.
It's a Wonderful Life is much better.
Yeah.
A much better film.
I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard.
I would
And
recommend it.
I looked up the 3 movies that have done that clean sweep that Gunch talked about at the Oscars. So obviously one is It Happened One Night. Do you guys want to try to guess what the other 2 are? They're like... They're classics.
Okay. Regrettably, I almost felt like maybe I hadn't heard of them, but maybe that's not true.
If they're classics.
Oh, no. You have heard of these. These are like... I mean, for me personally, I haven't seen one of these, but it's gonna be 5 stars, and the other one is 5 stars.
One of them is Coda, right?
No, so the sweep you were talking about, winning Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Screenplay. So those 5 categories. Only 3 have done that. Coda did where they win in every category they were nominated for, but only 3 have won all the best.
So I'm gonna guess the movies that if I was the person running the Oscars, would give the clean sweep to. So I'm trying to think of movies that have won Best Picture. Did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest win Best Picture?
That's one of them. That's a sweep.
Is it really? Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great cast, great director. I love Milos Forman, so.
That's very fair. Okay, I've definitely heard of and seen that movie.
Yeah.
Like 100 times.
I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
So
Nest.
the second one is a 90s movie.
A 90s movie.
Okay.
And it's from like a genre that doesn't usually get a lot of recognition at award shows.
Was it Misery?
No.
Oh, what was that stupid movie?
But did that win awards? Did Misery win awards?
Yeah, I thought Misery won Best Picture, or maybe Kathy Bates won Best Actress.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
But I mean, I do love Misery, but
I'm trying to think.
when you said like it's not something that gets nominated a lot, I just immediately my mind went to horror because I like horror, but it doesn't get enough love in the Oscars.
Yeah. That's the genre. I totally agree.
Oh, I was thinking of that movie they talked about on Seinfeld. What was it? The English Patient?
Oh yeah.
No.
Oh, that's where I was thinking.
Is it like that? Is it Atonement? I don't know.
No,
I know
think of,
it.
like really famous
What is it?
classic 90 horrors.
It's The Silence of the Lambs. It has to be.
Exactly. It's the
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
The Lambs.
Yeah, those are both 5-star movies.
That's not really a horror
That's a
until you
thriller.
realize that the dead guy in the ambulance is actually Hannibal Lecter wearing that guy's face. So,
Oh.
I think that was the richest part of that movie,
Yeah.
where he pulls his face off, and it's him.
yeah, that I was like, ooh, that was.
Yeah, that made me jump. Or like the part, I really like the part in that movie where like the SWAT team's going to the house.
Wait, can
and
I?
it's, like intercut, but it's not the same house. And
Oh yeah, I was so stressed. I was so stressed when I was watching that. I was like, it's not the right house.
right.
All right, does this movie belong in the IMDb top
Wait,
250?
really quick, can I quickly mention one thing that I found out just the other day about Silence of the Lambs, and I would like to bring this up because it's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trey, by the way, your camera is frozen right now, and I don't know if it's because you have the blur in the background. It's making things lag.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
try to fix it.
But
That's better.
yeah, so some guy restored the house that was Buffalo Bill's house and turned it into a bed and breakfast.
Wow.
And you can stay there,
That's
and during
crazy.
the day, you can take pictures with the girl that was in the well. Like, you can climb down there and take pictures with the girl who, like, put the lotion in the basket. They, like, restored the whole thing, and it's exactly, like, shot for shot how it was in the movie.
That's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
And yeah, you can
I
stay
always
there.
think
It's in like
Like that.
Philadelphia, and it's Buffalo Bill's house. If you Google it, you can stay there. It's so cool. So what were you saying, Trey?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, does this movie belong in the IMDb top 250? Well, you guys talk about this. I'm gonna go grab my computer charger.
All right. I'm gonna answer this with a no. I I do not think this belongs on the IMDb top 250. In fact, I would say it's not even close. It's all the way out there as far as what I would say. It has a lot of problems, which movies in the top 250 of all time should not have that many.
Yeah.
And this movie is incredibly flawed. So,
I would
I'd
agree.
say no.
I don't think it's so amazing just because it invented things. I think there is a difference between being a part of cinema history and being a good movie.
Yeah, and this can stay in cinema history because, like I said, it popularized the rom-com, but it can stay in cinema history and stay away from the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah. I think like this is a great example of why like I mean, I know IMDb is the networking app, right? And
Mhm.
it's like the legacy movie app. But I do trust Letterboxd more than IMDb. And I think that the reason is because like IMDb, I feel like there's a lot of cases where like legacy movies get a pass even though they're not that great, or they have a lot of like problems that weren't apparent back then, but only now that we've learned and we've had these conversations about things like intersectionality and feminism like in the age of information that we realize like, oh, like this has always been an issue. And so to prop it up on a pedestal is one of the greatest movies of all time. I mean, I don't want to use the word irresponsible, but that's the only word that comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
mean,
Yeah,
totally.
this movie
I don't
really
really,
inspired a lot, though. So I don't know.
I don't really have anything to add. I agree with you guys. Now to get to my favorite question that we like to do on this here podcast. Would these two main characters, could they beat Jack Torrance in a fight?
um, and we do not use weapons, correct?
Yep, that's a rule. No weapons.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Andre the Giant said, "Only my fist,
Yep, exactly.
man to man. It's not my fault God made me bigger than you."
Clark Gable is just like Andre the Giant.
Anybody want a peanut?
Yeah, they're the
It's
same.
my favorite line from that movie.
He's just like Andre.
He's just like Andre.
I think okay. One quick note that I also wanted to add that I thought was really interesting, and it does pertain to this. Apparently, Fritz Frelon, one of the like major producers and like creators of Looney Tunes, loved this movie. According to his like memoirs, this was like his favorite movie of all time. The characters inspired Looney Tunes, and I'm sure like you noticed that a constant thing that was happening with Clark Gable's character is he was like talking fast, right, and munching on carrots. He is the inspiration.
That
for Bugs
is
Bunny.
so true.
Oh my god.
I never realized that.
Well,
That's
I mean, Bugs Bunny beats Jack
mean,
Torrance,
By that logic, he would maybe beat Jack Torrance, but
and he's got
I mean,
Claudette Colbert, and as we know, Claudette Colbert has a magic calf that can stop cars.
yeah,
So
that is a valid take.
it is truly a limb mightier than the thumb, as she said in the movie.
it is truly a limb mightier than the thumb. So, do they beat
I'm gonna
Jack
say-
Torrance?
Was the thumb? Wait, I just want to ask. Did you guys think the thumb was a metaphor for something else? Because I did.
What do you think it was a metaphor for, Gunch?
Yes.
I think it's something we don't really want to talk about on this
What does
podcast.
a man have? That a man, you see, it's all about the thumb. You gotta just stick it out there. I don't know. Maybe I got a dirty mind, but that's it. And then when she was like, well, there's a limb mightier than the thumb, see? And it was like, this definitely feels like innuendo to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying how I read it.
Yeah.
And it's very, very possible.
All right. So no on the Jack Torrance. I think that's where I'm at least.
Yeah. I'm going to say no.
No.
Because, like, Jack Torrance was bested by Shelley Duvall in the movie in the end. And I think, like...
That's due to
2
weather.
against 1? Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what?
I think Jack Torrance does beat them, right? That's what we're saying?
He
Yeah.
had a mouthful of Oreo, or a stomach full of Oreos, though, and peanut butter. That's all he ate when he was locked in the soup pantry or whatever.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
That's no. Hey, I mean, I think he's way scarier than Clark Gable was in that scene. So, I mean, yeah, I would say no, but I totally respect that take, and I
Yeah.
think it's possible.
Yeah.
Oh, are we all agreeing that Jack Torrance wins?
100%.
Yeah.
I think so.
I would say he wouldn't win.
Yeah.
Wow.
Take
The
of the day.
first time on this podcast that Jack Torrance gets beat.
Oh no, that's not true.
What?
Okay, Iron Giant was a draw. That doesn't
Dude.
count.
No. Wait.
Draw? Iron Giant would totally. I'm sorry, I haven't listened to that episode, dude.
Iron
It's
Giant
Iron
doesn't.
Giant. He's Superman.
Here's Jagger's logic. Iron Giant, all of
Could.
his weapons
Are defense.
are based on defense and the sight of weapons. And the fact that we can't use weapons in this means that he won't go after Jack Torrance. And Jack Torrance will be so intimidated by a 100-foot tall steel robot that he won't do anything either. So, by that logic, it's a draw.
Wait. We didn't have the bit yet. So let's rewind really quick. Gunch, you're gonna sit here with us while we kind of rewind. We started this bit on Life of Brian. Dances with Wolves, as far as your main character goes, he has the entire army. They'd beat Jack Torrance.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And
So, since we started the bit, no one has beaten him.
since we started this bit, no one has beaten him.
Since we
And
started this bit.
Aladdin, I mean, you're trying to tell me he would not... I mean, we get that he has his 3 wishes. You're trying to tell me that the Aladdin... not the Aladdin, God. The genie, who we proved can shapeshift in, like, the first, 15, 20 minutes of this movie, would not absolutely destroy Jack Torrance?
So Aladdin gets
Oh,
the
he
genie.
totally would.
Yeah,
That's
I
not
mean,
even a question.
That's not a weapon. That's not a weapon.
that's not a
The
weapon.
genie's not a weapon.
He's a main character. And if we're doing...
His body's a weapon. He's like the Iron Giant.
He's like the Iron Giant, but he would not shy away from getting absolutely vicious.
And the whole idea of the Iron Giant is that he's a gun. I mean, like, you guys talked about like why Brad Bird wrote that, right?
Yeah.
Because of his sister. And then
Oh,
the whole idea is like, did you guys talk about that?
No.
No.
I didn't know anything
what
about his
happened-
sister.
Okay.
We need
I
to
love
research
Iron
more, Trey. We need to research more.
I'm just showing
Giant.
us
I'm
up.
sorry. I'm such a dork about trivia.
No, the Iron Giant's a movie to be...
The,
The Iron Giant is one of the movies that you should totally be nerdy about. The Iron Giant is a masterpiece.
I agree. I think that movie's flawless. But the reason Brad Bird made that movie is because his sister actually was a victim of gun violence. So his whole pitch for that movie was, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. The whole pitch for that movie was, what if a gun was sentient and a gun didn't want to kill people? There you have it, the Iron Giant.
that adds so many layers, and that is why that movie is in my top 4 of all time.
And
I love that movie.
I might have to put that in my top 4. I love that movie, dude.
And-
Honestly, I love that movie.
Trey, we talked about Brad Bird being the GOAT, but does this just add another G to the beginning? Like, the greatest of all time. Like,
He is the GOAT.
Because we
the
talked
goat.
about him being the greatest animated director working because he made both Incredibles movies, which first one is almost flawless for me. Second one, it's not as good as the first one,
But it's very good.
still very, very good. And
The second one
Ratatouille
needed a
is unbelievable.
Ratatouille's amazing.
so...
I think Ratatouille is better than the Incredibles one, but I love the Incredibles one.
I
But
say...
his all-time greatest is Iron Giant, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Iron Giant is his best movie, hands down.
And that just booted his greatest of all time status to truly greatest of all time. Because that adds so many layers to the Iron Giant that even if they
Sorry
weren't...
about the cycle, by the way.
The what?
Sorry about the cars and stuff outside of my window.
Oh, you're all good.
Could you see?
No, don't even worry about it.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, that's insane. That just adds so much to that movie. God. But yeah, Trey, do you think it's time we get into our next segment of the
Yeah.
show?
So today, I'm very excited. I think there's going to be some good fun conversation coming out of this. Today, today, we are each going to take what we think is one of our hottest takes. Just one.
Oh, just one?
And we're going to go through...
Oh, I could have done like top
just
5. I think top 5 hot takes would be great.
What's our runtime at, Jagger? Do you know?
I don't think runtime affects it. I think that this is great.
Well, this is running longer than I thought, which I love. This is great. But I got family dinner because it's my birthday tomorrow.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Trey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So why don't we just do one each? Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that works. I just got to think of my best one, though. All right, yeah. All right.
Well, I have my best one.
I have my hottest one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and kick it off.
All right.
So my hottest take is the Spider-Man trilogy. So not the new one, not Tom Holland, but the
Original Raimi.
Sam Raimi, the Raimi trilogy. So I know people hold these movies very highly as comic book movies, and I'm just using this as my one hot take. I know people like, especially Spider-Man 2, I know people hold that as like one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. Here are my ratings for... So I have Spider-Man 1 at 3 stars for 56 out of 100. I have Spider-Man 2 at 2.5 stars at 49 out of 100. And then I have Spider-Man 3 at 1 star for 24 out of 100. I just think
you were gonna say
the
Spider-Man
characters
3 is 5-star. My palms were sweating. It was like, oh my gosh.
No, Spider-Man 3 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
I it's pretty bad.
I don't know. It's so
Yeah.
campy. I kind of like it.
I do.
No, and I
kinda
get
think
it.
I wouldn't rate it that low, but I mean, I understand it is bad. But yeah, it's really campy. I mean, I appreciate the.
I'd have that at... I don't have
mean-
it logged, but for me, that's a 3.5.
Spider-Man.
And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
I love Raimi's campiness. Like on our first episode, or one of the first episodes
He went on
that
and
I
on.
was on with
Yeah,
Jagger.
you guys are huge Raimi fans.
Yeah.
We
I
talked
think you guys
how
are
much
more
we
Raimi
love-
fans than me.
Yeah,
we talked about how much
Yeah.
we love the Evil Dead trilogy. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. I think they're fucking hilarious. I think they're so funny. And I don't know what it is about these, but it's the campiness just doesn't work for me in these ones. And I think Kristen Dunst is, as Mary Jane, is one of the most unbearable characters in cinema. She is the absolute worst person in this trilogy, and I cannot stand her.
I love Kristen
Every time
Dunst
she's on
so
screen, I want to reach through and slap her. It's
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
oh my lord.
Well, I think
Her character-
Spider-Man 1 is a great movie. I would rate that at a 4.5 out of 5. I might even have it on Letterboxd as a 5. 2, yeah, it's all right. 3, I mean, it's bad, but good bad.
Like The
I'll take
Room.
it. That's
Yeah.
not that of a take. I think it's valid.
I think it's kind of in
Oh,
that
well, I
same
got-
vein as like the Tommy Wiseau movies. That they're so bad that they're good.
Right. Or Neil Breen.
See, I got the opposite reaction from those because I'm in a big film Discord for another podcast I listen to. And we have like a bot in there that will, every time someone logs a movie that the bot follows, it'll just throw it up in a chat. So everybody's reviews automatically get put in this chat. And I just got ripped apart for my Spider-Man reviews. Like, Trey, what are you doing? This is an illness take. Spider-Man 3 at 1 star. And whenever I say something that's like people will be like a W, but you do have Spider-Man 3 at 1 star. And I just got like ripped apart for that.
People are really, really hardcore about their fandoms. I don't even want to talk about Star Wars because I'm like actually afraid. I'm afraid of what people will say.
Star Wars fans are the worst. They're so annoying.
I love Star Wars, but God, some people just get so mad about it. Like,
all right,
I'm not gonna say that they're the worst, but like, oh God, just relax. It's just a movie. ASMR time.
All right. Sorry. I am going to quickly talk about Star Wars because I'm going to make you a little less scared. I like the Star Wars movies. As someone who has a younger brother, he was ecstatic. Like, the most excited person in the world to go to Disney, as every little kid is. As a lot of people are.
Yeah, kids and adults even.
Yeah.
Disney's great. I love Disney World.
I mean,
Disney's amazing.
Yeah.
Upon entering the Star Wars area, there was a group, like a full group of like 40-year-old men trampling someone in a like stormtrooper suit with their like cameras taking selfies with the person in the suit. God. And they were like talking to it as if it was a real, like, I don't know, as if they thought it was a real like stormtrooper, and they were like, what was it like meeting Han Solo? I threw up in my mouth from the mere sight of it. And
I hate that.
So
it's the worst. I'm not that bad. I definitely like geeked out when I got to meet Ant-Man. Like, I was like, oh my God, it's Ant-Man. But like, I'm not like, how is it working with the Avengers, sir? You know, I'm not that weird.
Right. I mean, these are people. You know, like, I don't understand why people just can't fathom that they're people. They're not characters, they're people. I mean, like, even with, like, you know, The Last Jedi, and I don't want to talk about what I think of The Last Jedi, because that's a really, really hot, like, scary hot topic. But people were getting majorly bullied. Don't say my review, Trey. Don't.
No, I'm just gonna say this.
Don't even.
Because I think I know where you're going. If I know what your thoughts are about it, I am in agreement. I like The Last Jedi. I think that is a great Star Wars movie.
I like The Last Jedi.
It's so fun. I had such a good time with it.
It's good. It's the only one that actually like tries to do something different, and that's why Star Wars, the original Star Wars, were so good, because they actually did something different. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I'm with you on that. So if people want to come after Gunch, they can come after me too, because I enjoyed it as well.
Trey's the man. So is Jagger.
I really do like The Last Jedi. I think that it's great fun. Maybe not as much as you, Gunch, but it's definitely good.
I don't think it's the best Star Wars movie.
All right.
That's totally The Empire Strikes Back. But anyways.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally Empire Strikes
Jagger.
Back. Yeah. All right, my hot take. God, I could have gone a lot.
With this.
I could have gone a lot of ways with this one. But in my opinion, Step Brothers sucks to the high heavens.
Oh.
It is. it is
nice.
So nauseatingly unfunny. And
I like Step Brothers.
It tries to do the embarrassing comedy, like kind of that Borat style of comedy. It doesn't do that. Will Ferrell is not funny. Elf sucks. It's the worst Christmas movie.
So are you not a fan of Will Ferrell in particular?
I really don't like Will Ferrell. I really, really don't like Will Ferrell. I love John C. Reilly. I thought he wasn't funny in it. I thought the script was really not good. I thought it had about 2 moments that made me chuckle. That's it. It was a very flatline comedy.
What was that moment that made you chuckle, though?
Their music
it-
video, I think.
It's the fucking Catalina wine mixer.
Yeah, it's the fucking Catalina wine mixer. I mean, like, I understand. I understand, like, not liking Will Ferrell. John C. Reilly is amazing. I definitely like him more than Will Ferrell. And I like Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
But then you have, like...
He's one of those actors that just brings an energy, always. He brings his energy.
Yeah, but John C. Reilly was so much better in, like, Boogie Nights that it puts this movie to shame.
It's a different type of role.
I know it's a different type of role, but when you put on that kind of display of a role that you can do that kind of good acting, and then you do Step Brothers.
That dude has range.
Yeah.
I think he's funny. I think he totally is gripping. I think he can be scary. He can be sad. I mean, John C. Reilly is like... I would say he's maybe one of the best working actors right now, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. But here's my thing. It's really hard because comedy is the hardest to find a hot take with, because comedy is probably, in my opinion, the genre where it's most... like, all movies are just what you like, but comedy is the most polarizing. Like, you either find it funny or you don't, and if you don't find it funny, the movie sucks. But if you find it funny, like, for me, like, Step Brothers is a 5-star. I think Step Brothers is one of the funniest movies ever made. It's right up there with Hot Rod and Wayne's World for me. Those are like my top 3 comedies.
Okay.
I think Wayne's World is...
Hot Rod is severely underrated. That movie is so funny.
Wayne's World is so valid. Wayne's World I have on Steelbook. Wayne's World is a 5-star comedy for me. But...
yeah, love Wayne's World.
And but it's
pretty good.
Very, very good. But Step Brothers is a 1-star comedy, in my opinion. And I find it to be so bad. Like...
Well, what do you think about Hot Rod?
What do I think about Hot Rod? I don't know that I have seen Hot Rod.
With Andy
Oh my
Samberg?
gosh.
I
need to get on that. That movie's so funny.
Oh, it's Andy Samberg?
Because, like, Adam McKay... Yeah, like, Hot Rod is like Lonely Island. Right? That's like that. Like, I think all of them are in it. And it's Bill Hader.
They're either in it or right on it.
Right. It's like that group of comedy people. And I love them. And, like, Adam McKay and, like, Will Ferrell, I mean, they're their own kind of brand. And I think that they're kind of hit or miss for me. I mean, there are movies that I really like. Like, I like The Anchorman. I think Step Brothers is pretty great. I wouldn't put it at 5 stars, though. But I think that that's a valid take. I think there's a lot of people who would agree with both of you guys. I already gave mine. I'm just kidding. I'll give another one. I think that Shutter Island...
Wait, what was yours?
Oh, what was yours?
Well, I already was saying, like, The Last Jedi was good, but here it is for real. Shutter Island is a bad movie.
All right.
See, and we were talking about that before this episode. I think there's a lot of people that hold this movie insanely high. I see a lot of TikToks, like, here are the top 3 movies from these directors. And they'll get to Scorsese and they're like, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, Shutter Island. And I'm like, that is... 2 of those movies are illness takes. And I think Shutter Island is definitely one of his weaker pieces of art. But, and it's like, I will agree with you, it's, if you don't predict the ending after, like, the first half hour, you have not been paying attention. If you pay attention, that is the most predictable ending in the history of cinema. But I do think I like it because I had a good time with it. Even though I saw what was coming, I was interested in how they were going to get there and the different twists and turns they were going to take. And that's kind of like what engaged me. But I can see how people can think that's a bad film because, again, it's not great. There's nothing inspiring about it. Nobody gives an amazing performance. And and I mean, all the actors in that movie have given like what?
But Mark Ruffalo is pretty great. But I even think Leo
Even-
DiCaprio wasn't so great in that movie.
Even Mark Ruffalo has given better performances than that, in my opinion.
Totally.
So I totally agree with you there. But I think I have it at like a 3.5 or a 4. But I don't have it rated as highly as like some people who have it at like a 5-star.
Yeah. I mean, I find it bad. And I think like one of the biggest reasons is because like Martin Scorsese has set the bar so high for himself. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of technical glaring flaws in that movie for me. And I know I can be a little nitpicky with movies sometimes, but meh, that's my hot take. Jagger.
Yeah.
On that same note, I would also like to say that when it comes to those top 3 Scorsese movies, I love Taxi Driver. I think Taxi Driver totally deserves to be in that top 3. Upon rewatch, The Wolf of Wall Street is like a 3-star movie.
Yeah, I didn't think it was as good as it was when I first watched it.
When I first watched it, I was kind of like enamored by it because it's like 3 hours. It's very entertaining, keeping your attention for 3 hours and making it feel like 2. It's not that good. I feel like I rated it at 4. I have yet to change my rating, but it kind of like at some point makes you kind of groan. It's kind of like
Yeah. I think an underrated of his is Cape Fear. I just watched that recently for the first time with Nick Nolte and De Niro, and in that one we get to see De Niro as like this psychotic evil villain, which we don't see from him very often, and he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And again, in that same vein, the Analyze This, Analyze That movies, having De Niro be like kind of the emotional guy, I love those movies. They're so great.
I think De Niro was pretty great.
And Billy Crystal is very funny. So yeah, I think
even though people say he's not, I think he is.
And even though he's not the nicest person ever, we understand that. He's pretty mean. So's Chevy Chase, but I mean, not laughing at Community is a task. The National Lampoon's movies.
There's a lot of other funny characters in Community and a lot of other funny actors in Community.
Yeah.
And also the Lampoon movies are good. But yeah, Chevy Chase.
He's funny. But
funny.
He's very mean, but very funny. Well, yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. And that's a 90-minute runtime. That's insane.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys. Thank you for bearing. Well, I mean, I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I certainly enjoyed myself.
No, yeah,
I had a great
we
time.
loved having you on. Yeah, you sparked some great conversation. That is twice the length of our usual
average episode
runtime. That's twice the length of our longest episode. So it'll be interesting dropping this one out. Yeah, we loved having you on. Again, you can follow socials. I am Trey, the Film Noob. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Trey RZ. He is Jagger Movie Reviews on TikTok. Jagger Pot Pie on Letterboxd. And then Gunch, you want to do a little self-promotion before we finish up?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Film Gunch on TikTok. Gunch's Arcade for gaming. And Film Gunch on Letterboxd. I thank you guys so much. Thank you, seriously. This was a blast.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
It was so
I'm
great.
excited to listen.
And-
thank you.
Dude, would you be okay coming back? Like, it was great having you on. You got to come back
We
sometime.
would love to have you.
You guys, oh my gosh. I would be so honored. Singular honor. Thank you. Seriously. That means a ton.
Yeah, we loved it. That was the best time I've had on an episode. That was a good time. It's fun
great.
having new people and new perspectives on here.
Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Yeah. These guys are amazing. So anybody listening, seriously, amazing up and coming movie creators, and they need to start going live ASAP. So go follow on TikTok, because I finally got live, and it's not a big deal to some people, but it just means a lot to me, and I would love to have them. I would love to go on their lives, and we could talk about movies there too. So thank you for listening.
Yeah,
everyone.
we'll have to figure that out.
All right. Thank you all for listening. thank you, maybe some of you, for watching, even. And
Yeah.
it was great having you on, Gunch. And yeah, thank you all so much for listening, and follow us. Leave us a rating, a review on Spotify, whatever. Also,
And
if you're
now,
listening on
like and subscribe on YouTube.
like and
Yeah,
subscribe.
let's go. YouTube.
You can say that now. And comment.
And comment.
down low
Oh, yeah.
who you think had the hottest take out
And-
of the three of us.
No, Trey. We are going to be starting a segment as soon as you guys start commenting. If you are answering our Q&As, the Q&A that we have available on Spotify, we're going to be answering audience questions as a new bit. So
Yeah, let's.
we're going to
Yeah.
try and add some
So if
interactivity.
you have any questions,
If you have any questions, if you have a movie you want us to talk about, then just throw it down in the comments. Throw it down on your Q&A thing that's currently right below this on our Spotify. Then, yeah, please. Interactivity. We'll try and set up, if you're listening on, like, Apple Podcasts or whatever, we'll try and set up another way. But as of right now, comment. That's really easy. All right, and yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. That is officially 90 minutes crossed, and goodbye.